Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the I Will Teach You a Language podcast. Hope you're doing well. Coming to you from a very, very cold London right now. It's crazy. I was in Hong Kong just last week, and it was about 28 degrees. But very humid as well, so it feels like a million degrees. So 28 degrees, for those of you who operate in Fahrenheit, is... So what do you do? The rule of thumb I learned is you double it and add 30. So from 28, we double it and we get 56. And then we add 30, 86. So 86 degree heat. Doesn't sound like that much, does it? But with the humidity of Hong Kong, wow. Anyway, it's always a bit of a funny one when you kind of go from one place to the next and the temperature drops by like 70%. Just in like your body just doesn't know what to do, how to respond, and so I'm kind of suffering the consequences right now. Anyway, it's nice to be back home, I have to say. London, for me, London is the best city in the world. I think it's amazing. Not so much in winter, although it's still cool, but especially in the spring and summer, which we are in store for now, it is the best place. If you've never been to London, you really must come, and send me an email. We can go for a coffee or a G&T or something like that. All right then, let's hear today's question from Luke.
Hey Ollie, Lehal, it's Luke here. So I wanted to ask how to learn new words on a niche topic in a language with limited resources. You usually want to hear about people talking about learning new words in a specific topic or area. You're supposed to read a lot, or maybe find a podcast with transcripts and just go through that. But because Cantonese has quite limited resources, I can't really do that. So I wanted your tips on how best you would go about that. Right now, I've been writing out by hand a diary entry or in full, and then getting it corrected on Lang 8, then taking the corrected entry and just speaking about it with my teachers over Skype and taking all of the new words from that in the full sentence and putting it into my flashcards. So that's it. I just wanted to get your tips for that. Cheers, Ollie. Bye.
Hey Luke, good to hear from you. Thank you for the question. Luke and I are friends actually, and it's kind of funny to be reviewing my podcast questions and to have questions from somebody that I know, but also very cool. And I think, Luke, the fact that you actually go to the extent of actually sending in this question rather than just asking me on Facebook or something it's a sign of how you approach language learning in general, very diligently and really looking and searching for the right way to go about things, which is a fantastic thing. So good on you. Okay, so how do you learn niche vocabulary in a topic? I have changed my approach on this recently. Or I don't know if I've changed, but I've been refining my approach on this recently because it's something that I've been doing myself. So I'm going to tell you what I do. But first of all, just because the audio wasn't super clear, let me just summarize quickly what the question and also what Luke's been doing. So his question is, in Cantonese, which is the language that he's learning, how should you go about learning niche vocabulary? And by niche vocabulary, we mean stuff related to a specific topic, okay? So if you're an engineer, then vocabulary to do with engineering and your work, stuff that most people probably wouldn't know, or else it's quite specialized. Either way. So what Luke has been doing right now is he has been doing a daily diary entry. So writing something in Cantonese and then getting it corrected. And then from the correction, I imagine what would happen is that you would be told more appropriate vocabulary to use, which you would then consider to be the vocabulary that you need to learn in order to talk about the topic. At that point then, you're going off and you're having conversations on italki, I guess, with your tutors, using that vocabulary and trying to recycle it. And I think that's great. What you're doing is you're getting vocabulary that you need in a targeted way, and you are recycling it. It sounds like exactly the kind of thing that I've done before myself. Now, here's the thing about that, Luke. That approach is very much based on production. So what you're doing is you are writing stuff. You're trying to come out with stuff yourself. You're getting it corrected, and then you are, based on the correction, you're doing lots of speaking then with that, which cements the stuff that you are learning and helps you to remember it. And that's great. However, I don't think it's the most efficient way of going about it. And the reason is that by doing stuff that way, you're missing a huge part of a huge opportunity or a huge part of the learning process, which is actually a lot easier, which is the receptive part. Okay. Now, you kind of touched on this earlier because you said there's not a lot of materials out there for Cantonese. And so I suspect that if there were more materials, you might be doing things a little bit differently. But let me describe what I've been doing recently with Japanese, because I think there's maybe a lesson in here somewhere, and I think you can apply this to Cantonese as well. So recently in Japanese, I've been doing a lot of reading and listening on the topic of the science of language learning, or language acquisition, if you like. It's something I can talk about casually, but not formally, not academically. But I would quite like to be able to do that. And so what I've been doing is I've been pulling articles from around the internet on about language acquisition. 私たちはどうやって言語を習得するのか. And I asked my friends to record the audio for me. So just the other day I asked my friend Saori to record an article where she's just basically reading the article for me. So I have the text and I have the audio. And then what I do is I just go off and for days on end, I'll just listen to those articles. I'll listen and listen along to the audio and read along at the same time. And what happens is that I have to look up a lot of words because some of the words are quite difficult. Things on like research papers and spaced repetition and brain plasticity and stuff like that. It's not easy. But by spending hours and hours just listening to that stuff in my free time, what happens is I get so much of that stuff for free because it just goes in, right? Not all of it, but a lot of the stuff just goes in. And because I've spent that time listening to the articles on that topic, I not only learn vocabulary, but I also learn phrases that are associated with explaining this kind of stuff, turns of phrase, idioms, and just basically spend time listening to how a educated person converses on that topic. And so when I then sit down to actually specifically memorize some of that vocabulary, because there's some stuff that, like I said, that's quite hard, and I have to commit some of it to memory more manually, I've already done so much of the work, because that word I might be trying to learn, I've already heard it dozens of times already in context, in an entire sentence and paragraph, and in the context of the article. Right? That I find to be incredibly efficient. Reception first, production later. So then when I come to actually sit down and talk about the topic, I really don't have to do that much preparation because it's, with a few exceptions, it's all there in my head already. For me, this is the most effective way of doing stuff, and it's how all of the stuff that I'm producing, all the materials and courses I'm making now are based on that. The Spanish course, my Spanish beginner program, which incidentally is being renamed to Spanish Uncovered. Hope you like the name. It's all based around reading and listening. So as a learner, what you do is you take a short story, and over the course of the entire program, you spend all this time listening to the story and reading the story. So you just build up this knowledge, this familiarity with the language, such that when you come to the lessons in the course, we're just kind of refining it, and we're just giving you a little push in the right direction, but you've already done most of the work by doing the reading and listening. Luke, I know you have Cantonese conversations which are created. It's exactly the same principle there. You spend the time listening and reading to it, so it all goes into your brain. It might not be totally crystallized yet, but the input is there. So then if you choose to memorize some of that vocabulary and then use it in speaking on that topic, you can. It's much, much easier to do that than I think what you described. So what you described seems to sidestep all of the reception stuff. There's no listening and reading. You are going directly into writing diary entries yourself. And so the big opportunity there, because I think what you're doing is great, but the big opportunity that you're missing is, well, what happens if before you go into the production, the speaking and the writing and all of that, what happens if you spend time listening and reading to the language? How much more could you consolidate what you learn? How much more easily could you memorize and remember stuff? How much more articulately could you speak on the topic if you've already spent hours listening to people talking on that topic, right? So that's the basic principle. But of course, what you said before was, well, you don't have access to that material in Cantonese. Maybe not, but you can create it. And this is what I do. All right. So if you are, let's say that you wanted to learn more niche vocabulary about engineering. So what would I do? I would immediately go and find articles in Chinese on the topic of engineering and then have them rewritten in Cantonese. So send it to my tutor and say, look, can you please rewrite this in Cantonese and do a voice recording of the article in Cantonese. Or I would go to a friend who's an engineer in Cantonese and say, look, could you just talk about this topic for a bit? Talk about what you do and record it. And then I would ask someone to transcribe it. So I'll produce this material. And okay, it's a bit of a pain because you've got to actually produce it. But once it's there, you're going to be super motivated to actually study with it because you've created it yourself. You've had it done, right? And then once you've got the audio and the transcript, then you just spend your time listening and reading to that stuff. Maybe you produce 4 or 5 things and you just listen to them on rotation. So you're just getting all this input on exactly the topic you want to learn about. From that point, then if you start to do your diary entries, if you start to use flashcards, you start to speak with your tutor, everything's going to be so much more informed from your side because of the work you've already done, and everything's going to be so much easier. You're going to learn everything much quicker. Okay, so that is what I would recommend as an alternative to what you're currently doing. As you know, I'm a big fan of producing your own materials. I think it's a great thing to do. The only downside is it costs you a little bit, either in terms of actual hard cash or else currency and goodwill with your friends. But I think it's really worthwhile. And Luke, I know you have a Cantonese blog as well, so maybe you could publish some of that material that you make on the blog as well to help others. That sounds really cool. I think I'd use it myself. So there you go. Hope that was useful. If you'd like to ask me a question, just like Luke did, then please go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask. Now, at the end of every episode, I like to leave you with a resource of some kind on the topic of the show. And I think this is a good spot to talk about producing your own materials, because really, your options expand exponentially when you actually do this yourself. So back in episode 236, I answered a question from Louise, which is all about creating your own study material. The episode was titled, How Can I Create My Own Study Material? So you can see what I did there. I am extremely creative with my episode titles. And if you'd like to listen to that episode to get some ideas on how to make stuff for yourself to study with, you can go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/episode 236. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. And here at Story Learning, everything that I do is powered by stories, whether that's writing books, teaching lessons, crafting courses. My mission is to help everyone succeed at learning a new language through the power of story. And we now have comprehensive language courses in over 15 languages, from Spanish to French, Korean to Japanese, and across all levels from beginner to mastery. And you can take a 7-day free trial of any of these programs by visiting storylearning.com/courses. I've poured my heart and soul into creating these courses over the last 10 or so years, and we've helped tens of thousands of new students achieve their dreams of learning a new language, all through the power of story. So go ahead and take a free trial. There's no commitment. You can try out our method for free. See if this can also be the breakthrough for you that it's been for so many other people. storylearning.com/courses.